Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Stacy with the Laws of Sex. I'm here with my co-host Blanca. Hi, Blanca. You were hiding
Hello,
behind the picture.
that's right.
I doing good today. How are you?
I'm always amazing when I'm in your company because you're so positive and you just have such a phenomenal outlook on life.
Thank you. And I did just get my hair done more purple. Can you see?
It is gorgeous.
Yes,
What
now with
inspired the purple originally?
I've had the purple for 5 years, and I always just felt, first of all, purple's my favorite color. And it always feels very passionate when I'm in surrounding of purple, surrounded by purple. And so it just so happens that being in this career where my tagline is my passion is to help you create yours, I just figured I have to just stay purple.
I love it. I
I do.
love your whole brand and I love the hair. And I love your emoji of yourself too on Facebook.
My purple emoji, my purple hair emoji. It's great. Well, now with the quarantine kind of getting away a little bit, we were allowed to get our hair done. So I was like, yay.
I know I'm getting so many texts. I'm getting my hair and nails done. I love it.
So anyway, so today with Laws of Sex, it's actually a really, really good subject, but I wanted to start with my quote of the week. And it says, "The uterus transplant was a success. I'm sure you'll find your husband much more understanding now." And you have a little doctor with the man in the bed and the wife by the side. And I just thought that was funny because maybe the men won't think it's too funny, but you know, the women have a lot to deal with when it comes to their uterus. And there's so many things that we have, like, you know, babies and periods and cramping and all these fibroids and pelvic issues and endometriosis. I mean, there's just a whole bunch of things where sometimes you'll have the man just be like, "Oh, she's on her period again," or, "Oh, you're crabby. Is it that time of the month?" Not realizing how intense a uterus could really be.
You're
So,
right.
so
You're
I
right.
just thought that was kind of funny. So maybe the men might understand sometimes more what women may go through if they had a uterus transplant.
There you go. We always
So that,
love, I love it. I love the analogy.
yeah, so that brings me to my sexy subject. I'm not sure how sexy it is, but it is about sex. And it's actually wanting to talk about sex after hysterectomy. Some of the things that I want to talk about are some reasons for having a hysterectomy, different types, because people get very scared when they hear the word hysterectomy. They think their sex life is going to be over. So I want to talk about things that you can expect right after surgery up until a few months, and then from that time for another 6 months, and then after you start healing, moving forward. A lot of people are concerned that once they have a hysterectomy, their sex life is over. And personally, I had a hysterectomy, and I believe that everybody's situation is different. There's going to be some people that have bad experiences, some people are going to have good experiences, but I think knowledge is power. It's important to kind of know what's what. So some people don't even know what a hysterectomy is. They think that everything is gone and they're going to not have hormones and everything because of ovary removal. So the hysterectomy is the surgical removal of the uterus,
Okay.
and you could have the cervix taken out or you don't need the cervix taken out. So just depending on what kind of surgery you have, the hysterectomy is only the removal of the uterus with or without the cervix. And they could take it out through the abdomen where they cut on top, or they could take it out through the vagina when they do it laparoscopically. And people get confused because they don't understand that the tubes and the ovaries are not part normally of a hysterectomy unless it's specifically stated in your surgical procedure. So taking the tubes is called a salpingectomy, and removing your ovaries is an oophorectomy. And that's how you feel after. Oof. So,
I'm sure. I'm sure. Well, I can't, I've not gone through that process, but I have had 2 C-sections. And that was a fairly, difficult recovery. It's a very, difficult thing to go through.
well, that's it. So people, when they have C-sections, it's similar to, I don't want to say similar to a hysterectomy, but you're getting cut. You still need to heal. And you think about it, these wounds when you have surgery are inside, not like, an outside wound that has the opportunity to heal. So it's going to take time. And sometimes the doctors may say, oh yeah, you'll be fine in 4 to 6 weeks or whatever. And then people get upset or disappointed when here you are 6 to 8 weeks, still having pain, still having problems. So I think it's very important to discuss it so people understand that you don't have to go exactly by the timeline of the physician. I mean, yes, you should listen to the physician as to when to start having sex, but your body's going to tell you what's going on. And if you listen to your doctor and there's many people that I hear from that says, oh, well, you know what, I just really was horny, I wanted to do it. And they go and they have sex at 3 weeks post hysterectomy and then rupture something. So it can be damaging. You have to be very careful. So the next slide, I wanted to just give people an idea of what their body looks like. Because another thing, as a sexologist, I have people come into my office and they don't really even know, as a woman, what their body looks like inside. So basically, if you look at the bottom, you have the vagina, and then you have a cervix. So a hysterectomy may or may not remove that cervix. If they remove the cervix, then they take the top part of the vagina and sew it closed, and that's called a vaginal cuff. Then you have the uterus, and that big triangle is where the babies are if you're pregnant. If not, that's where the lining is that sheds when you have a period. And then you have the little curls on the side, which are fallopian tubes. And then those little yellow balls are ovaries.
Okay.
So that's what your insides would look like. So on the next slide, I talk about the different types of surgery and the reasons why you have the surgery. And people get fibroids. Fibroids are usually non-cancerous tumors of the uterus, and they can get painful and large. Irregular bleeding, pain. Some of the pain can be due to endometriosis, where there's tissue growing outside of the uterus. Adenomyosis, which can only be diagnosed after you have the hysterectomy, but there's still signs and symptoms that make the doctors, I don't want to say assume, but make the doctors aware that this could very well be adenomyosis, just inflammation of the uterus, cancer, prolapse, pelvic inflammatory disease, and other issues related to birth control implants. Which actually is something that affected me, like an IUD or Essure. I had Essure, and Essure are little coils that they put in the vagina, through the cervix, through the uterus, into the tubes, where part of it hang into the uterus, develops scar tissue around it, and is supposed to protect you from pregnancy. What happens is that they don't always go as planned. They're not always inserted properly. Same thing with IUDs. And due to the nature of the type of birth control it was, the only way that I was able to take it out is by a hysterectomy. There's other people, depending on the location of some of the stuff, that they don't need one, but in my case, I needed one. And so I was very nervous because same thing, I never had a hysterectomy. So I didn't know what to expect.
When did you have that?
I had it about 2014, so 6 years ago. And in my case, it made a major difference with pain and bleeding and all the issues that I was having. So my sex life improved dramatically. If I wouldn't have had the hysterectomy, I would have been in really bad shape.
Oh, wow.
So I thought it was very important because there's so many of these issues with cancer and bleeding and pain and fibroids and birth control that people are nervous because they did all these things, let's say with birth control, to avoid having a hysterectomy. They were just trying to make sure they didn't get pregnant again. So there's a lot of nervousness, not being educated enough to understand what choices people have.
And I think it's important to get educated before these issues or any issues arise, because then you're more educated, you're calmer when you're more educated. And if you do have to go through this process, you have some foundational information that puts you at an advantage. Do you agree with that?
I totally agree. And you know what? There's a lot of people, it's difficult. You trust your doctor. I'm not saying you shouldn't trust your doctor, but always trust your gut. If your gut is telling you something, even if the doctor's telling you something else, do your own research. Do your own research, get a second opinion, weigh out what you're learning, what you're finding out, because you have to be able to put trust in your doctor. But many times you are finding out information that not everybody knows. Doctors may not know certain things about, certain removals, and it's important to, like you said, educate so you can go in to some type of surgery or some type of procedure knowing what to expect. And don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah, you have to have a good command. So this is really good foundation. So you're going to tell us about the different types of
Yeah, there's a few different types. And so this is what, when people say I had a hysterectomy, it just means that they're not really sure exactly what part of the body that came out, except for your uterus for sure. So the partial hysterectomy is just your uterus. That means they leave your cervix. Okay, so it's just the uterus area. A total hysterectomy is your uterus and your cervix. So when someone says they had a hysterectomy, that does not mean that your ovaries are going to be gone, and your ovaries are what produces all these hormones for libido and estrogen and all that kind of stuff. So when you hear hysterectomy, for people that don't know what a hysterectomy is, they're like, oh my God, my sex drive is going to be gone. I have to get my ovaries removed. No, you don't. Not unless there's other issues. So the hysterectomy, which is the uterus and the cervix, with bilateral salpingectomy. I know it's a lot of medical terminology, but a salpingectomy is the removal of the tubes. So here you have the hysterectomy and tubal removal. And the next one is the hysterectomy with bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy. That's a tongue twister. And that's a hysterectomy with bilateral, which means both, salpingo, which are the tubes, oophorectomy are the ovaries. So that's when you're taking everything out, the uterus, the cervix, the tubes, the ovaries. But most people, when they go in for a hysterectomy, will initially just try to take out either the uterus or the uterus and cervix. And then the doctor a lot of times will look around and see what's going on if things are more necessary to take out. Such as with cancer and things that are more severe, that's when they do a radical hysterectomy. That sometimes affects the surrounding tissue, where they have to get into lymph nodes and they have to get into other parts of the pelvis area. Sometimes they even have to take out some of the vagina a little bit more, because with the regular hysterectomy, and they do, let's say, a cuff on the vagina, they're basically take the cervix off, close the top, and that's what happens. But with the radical, which a lot of females feel more nervous about, which is understandable, because they do have to shorten the vagina a little bit.
Okay.
So those are some of the types. It can be overwhelming, but that's, you need a little bit of education first.
Definitely.
So some of the benefits of having hysterectomies is you usually would have sex more often because you're not having pain or problems. So that could be a benefit, because I know with me, I was having it less when I had the Essure in, because I was having pain, I was having bleeding, and I was having all these issues. Now that it's all gone, I'm having sex more often.
Well, that's important, because there's a lot of women out there that they might not know that this could actually be something that could save their marriage too.
Absolutely. Sometimes the fear overtakes, like what's going to happen. But if you're not having those issues, you also desire sex more often. Hopefully, not everybody, but if you desired it before you were having these issues, hopefully you can desire it again once the issues are taken care of. You can usually have a little bit more frequent orgasms because you're not focused on pain or discomfort while you're having sex. So less pain is definitely something positive. A lot of people are having painful sex, and knowing that you don't have to have that anymore, you're like, okay, well, let's try it again, So hysterectomy is going to treat those types of issues, which once these problems are gone, most people can get back to a normal sex life.
Well, those benefits are definitely tremendous and create a lot of awareness.
Right. So let's talk sex. Initially after surgery to probably about the 12-week mark, there's going to be a lot of healing, not only physically, but mentally as well, because a lot of people have the fear of their womanhood being gone. And a lot of people identify themselves with their womb, you know, especially if they've had kids. It's like, well, this was my baby's home. And so there's an emotional issue as well as a physical issue when you have a hysterectomy. You know, so the important thing is to not rush whenever you do anything intimate. Make sure that you get the okay from your doctor. Usually, depending on what type of hysterectomy, on average, the basic baseline hysterectomy is usually 6 weeks. 6 to 8 weeks. I tend to veer towards the further, because what happens many times is people try things too early and their mind starts connecting to their vagina, thinking, okay, this wasn't good, this was painful. So the next time they're connecting negative feelings towards what just happened. Make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you help people work through that negative association, right?
Right. I do that very often because it happens very often. So many people are trying to get ahead of things and they start associating things in a negative way. So it's very important to pay attention, first of all, what your doctor says, and listen to the 6 to 8 weeks that was recommended. That means no penis, no fingers, no toys, no tampons, nothing. Okay, pelvic rest.
Yeah.
Right? And then what's very important is that anytime you start doing something for sex, after you finally at that healing point, use lube. Even if you think you're going to lube yourself, just protect your body and use lube. The better types of lubes are the silicones or maybe even coconut oil, because that's natural. The water-based, if it has glycerin, that can cause irritation. So you want to stay away from the water-based lubes that have glycerin. But lubes are very important, especially after the hysterectomy, because your body's in a healing process. And if you're still having issues of pain and bleeding, once you try again, definitely reach out to the doctor.
Absolutely.
I know after my hysterectomy, it took me a good 12 weeks to feel like I could actually have sex without pain and without bleeding. I had to go back about 3 or 4 times to get cauterized due to bleeding.
How long did it take you to fully recover?
I would probably say 6 months, to where I actually had sex and was like, wait a second, oh my God, I'm good. It doesn't hurt. I was still very careful for another 2 months. So I would probably say 8 months is when I was like, yeah, you know.
Then you started enjoying the experience.
Then I started enjoying it.
So it took you longer than probably the average person to recuperate?
I tend to take a little longer to heal in general, according to any surgical procedure I've ever had. But with something like this, even though the doctor said to me, oh, you should be fine in 6 weeks, I was not fine in 6 weeks. It took me at least 12 weeks. And I kept on going back saying, okay, I'm bleeding again. I'm bleeding again. So sometimes there are issues, and it's scary because I'm thinking, am I ever going to be normal? You know, am I ever going to enjoy sex? I've had all these years with issues from the birth control thing. When am I going to have normal sex again? And so it was very, very helpful. Certain things like even loss of sensation, people say, okay, well, finally we're allowed to do it. It's been 2 months and I'm struggling with orgasm. A lot of people have uterine orgasms or cervical orgasms. And so without, like for me, without the uterus there contracting, what was interesting is I had to relearn my body, and I had to relearn where the orgasm was coming from and refocus and reshift before I was actually able to get back in order.
That's difficult. That's pretty challenging. And that's you as a sex therapist. You know, you're so in touch.
Sexologist, yes. Yeah,
sexologist, you're so in touch with your body and with the topic of sex.
Right.
So I would imagine that's something else you could help other people with as a sexologist.
100%, because first of all, communication is key. So at those beginning first 3 months, your partner, if you're going to be wanting to have sex, your partner may be all up, like, oh, the doctor said 6 weeks. Come on, why aren't you doing it? Why is this not working? Why aren't you having an orgasm? Why? It's so important to have that communication, because otherwise you're going to wind up putting too much pressure on your female counterpart, And that's going to cause that connection of negativity to the vagina, and it's going to make things that much worse down the line. And when you're finally able to do it, what I recommend when you're finally able to have sex is to do some masturbation if you're comfortable with it. If not, it's something that maybe you want to talk to me about, where I can get you feeling comfortable with your body. But it's very important to be able to just see how your body's functioning afterwards, because things change. And even with ovary removal, sometimes it takes a couple of weeks for your ovaries to be like, get out of shock from what just happened, if you still have your ovaries.
No doubt about that.
Right.
And so you sort of went through the 4 to 6 month
Yeah,
section.
4 to 6 months is just continue using the lube, relearn your body, which is what I was saying. So right around that 4-month mark, I was like, okay, what's going on here? And then I talk about right here, what just because you're physically healed doesn't mean you're that ready emotionally. And that's just something that I help with, because it does take time to emotionally and mentally get back to understanding your body and realizing what it can and can't do, and relearning how to please yourself. And that's where communication is very, very important with your partner, and being able to relax. And foreplay. You don't want to just jump into sex, give that foreplay a chance.
It makes sense. I mean, it's the process of incrementalism. You want to make sure that you're ready in slow steps. You don't want to rush it.
Absolutely.
And how do things look at the 7+ mark?
7 month, I know for me, right around that 6-month mark is when I started feeling like a normal human being again. First of all, knowing that I'm healing and trying to get past the whole drainingness of being in bed and sleeping and hysterectomy. So usually at this time, women start getting back to the way they were prior, when they had libido, and they have less pain, less discomfort. So then the sex drive starts slowly coming back. As long as you've been able to progress with your partner in a positive way, then that can help. And many women still need lube. Doesn't necessarily mean that there's something wrong or that your partner's not pleasing you or that you're not excited, but the lube is going to be very important after hysterectomy. Many people still can develop lubrication, but don't feel bad about using lube. One thing that I also found out is that 13% of women reported greater intensity of orgasms than before. I know I did, because I had to refocus just on the clit, where before some of my focus was on my uterus contracting. So it was kind of like an all-around feeling. But once I had the uterus removed, it didn't contract anymore. So I had to refocus in my mind where the orgasm was coming from. And woo, it was powerful. So it made a big, big difference. But if you do have a hysterectomy and you're not having the libido and you're still struggling, and maybe you didn't have it before, let's look at the relationship. Let's look at ways that you can bring back intimacy. Talk to me. I can definitely help and try to get you back on track.
It's so important. Don't take it for granted that sometimes you need a coach, and you might need a coach in the area of sex. And who better than Dr. Stacy Friedman to carry you through?
Thank you. So back to sex facts. One thing that could be helpful, being that your uterus is gone and maybe possibly even your cervix, you can help hit the G-spot by using one of these pillows. And this is what you can get on my website also. It's called Inflatable Position Master. And you can put that under your hips, and it lifts the pelvis around 27 degrees, and it helps you hit the G-spot much easier. And also helps when you put some lube on, keeps you from being dry, and it helps you with getting that tighter feeling inside. So that's a really great accessory.
That's really, really incredible. I didn't even know such a product existed. I learn so much from you every week. It is crazy, crazy.
Well, I'm glad to hear. I'm glad to hear. So one of the things that I get asked often, asked Dr. Stacy, is someone had messaged me and said, I keep hearing different opinions about keeping my cervix or having it removed with my hysterectomy. Well, having my cervix removed affects how sex feels. For many women, I know in my case, I had my cervix removed, didn't do anything as far as how I feel sexually. The men don't feel a difference. A lot of people are concerned if their man's going to feel a difference. Most of the time, the men don't feel a difference. The only time is if there's a little too much of the vagina removed, they may feel not as deep, but still that foreplay helps stretch it. But the cervix, there are some women that do have that cervical pounding. They do feel a lot of sensation when their partner is hitting their cervix, which helps when they have an orgasm. So there are some people that do get affected by it.
That's okay. So it's
Yeah.
sort of a mixed bag, depending.
Right. So there are some people say, well, I don't want it to affect my sex life. But what happens is, like with me, sometimes you have to relearn your body and find different ways to find pleasure. I would rather that than the pain that I was dealing with. So you have to kind of do the pros versus cons.
Well, that's true. And it's a difficult, it is one of the questions that came to my mind. It's a balancing decision. That's
Yeah,
personal.
definitely balancing act. I know that I would rather not have the pain and the bleeding and all that kind of stuff and be able to enjoy. So the Toy Talk Thursday, speaking of the other toy, the air inflatable position master, and this one, you can get it on my website. If you want the discount code, it's TTT20, Toy Talk Thursday 20 for 20% off of your entire order. But these are called silicone love balls, or you can just search Benoit balls. These are ways to help tighten your muscles, because sometimes after surgical procedures, they're not as tight. So you can do exercises with these to help with any type of prolapse, strengthen the muscles around the vagina.
Okay.
And the way you do it, it looks kind of funny. It's like almost alienish.
It does.
There's so many different kinds. It's kind of like I said, the little gold Benoit balls, but this one is neat because they're attached and they also have silicone. So it's very, very easy to clean. You put them up the vagina as far as you can. You're not going to go into your uterus if you, you don't have a uterus, but I meant your cervix if you have a cervix, because the cervix is closed.
Okay.
But as long as you're healed and the doctor says it's okay to use, then you can put them up to the vagina or up to, the edge of the cervix area, and you clench your, that vagina like a Kegel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if you have the string hanging down, where some of the balls have them, that should be hanging out of your vagina, like a tampon.
Okay.
Put your underwear on, go about your day, and keep your vagina tight so that way they don't fall out.
Interesting. Okay.
You're not going to walk around and they're going to just fall on the floor.
So it's a strengthening exercise.
Strengthening exercise. Yeah.
That's really cool. I've never heard of that. That's also new. And I think we've got your sexational position of the week.
Yes, I put a new subject matter that I want to do every week. And it's called the sexational position. And this position is actually a good one to do when you are able to start having sex again, to alleviate some discomfort or pain. And also the woman can be a little bit more in charge on how deep their partner goes in. And it's the spooning position, which I'm sure most people know about the spoon. You can lay a little more forward and lift your butt up a little to gain a little more access, or you can lift that one leg up to gain a little more access. But what's nice is that you're able to move your body a little easier, so that way the penetration may not be as deep.
That's awesome. And that's going to be a new segment on Dr. Friedman's webcast. Every week, she'll be teaching us a new sexational position and keeping it fresh. I love it. And what's your law of sex for the week?
Do your homework as to what the right surgical procedure is for you, and be patient with your healing process. Start slow, use lube, and communication is key. Definitely start slow. The main idea, my main law, is be patient with yourself and your body and your partner. If there's men watching that has women that have hysterectomies, be patient with your partner.
It's such a combination of communication and really being in touch with yourself. What an important law of sex. And don't forget, you can get the free ebook download or paperback on Amazon of Dr. Friedman's book, Confessions and Lessons of a Sexpert. Just click the book link at drstacyfriedman.com. Can't wait for all of you to read that book, and we can talk about it and ask questions of Dr. Friedman about it. Well,
that'll have to be a webcast.
There you go. And if you can believe it, we're at the close of the laws of sex. You can reach Dr. Stacy Friedman at 561-899-7669 or her website, drstacyfriedman.com, or email her, at Stacy at drstacy.org. And you can find Dr. Friedman on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Well, Dr. Friedman, it's always an honor. And I truly learn so many laws of sex from you every single week.
Thank you. I love helping others. I want to just let everybody know that I do have for women's only a Facebook group. If you look up intimacy, sex, and empowerment, we help all different women. Everybody is a great community of women to help others be able to answer questions, learn things, and find other people that are dealing with some of the same issues you are. And so definitely sign up to join that if you're a woman 18 and older. And my passion is to help you create yours. So thank you for helping me, Blanca, helping others create their passion. And we will see you next week.
Sounds amazing. Have a great night, everyone. And we'll see you next Thursday at 7 o'clock for the Laws of Sex. Good night.
Good night.